Okay, as we start in turn 3, the reinforcements for this turn, the Russians only have 2, and they're both supply depots, 1 for each army, which will allow them to push forward a little bit. They get a penalty here from now on if they're not in Germany north of the 20XX, which is basically this row. So I have to maintain a presence in Germany for the rest of the game. The other big victory point thing is I get a special victory points bonus here in turn 6. And what is that for? That's for being 14x north of 14XX and west of 19. We just look at this again. The 14XX is this. West of 19 means down here, so I've got to be in kind of this corner here. I've got to make a break into the board a little bit deeper. And, you know, the Germans have been giving some ground to Samsonov, so that should be, it looks like it may be doable to get some of those points, maybe. We'll see. Alright, we can see Samsonov is still kind of stuck here. He's waiting on his supplies. He's got this army that can't just cut across because he doesn't want to be out of supply there. Remember, there's an attrition check if you are out of supply. And in that case, let's see. You've got a 50% chance of losing half your steps. That's not something you want to risk. So he's kind of having to move his way to try to get here. There just aren't many rails going right to Germany or close to Germany. In fact, the Russian rail net's pretty weak to begin with. As you can see, the run up to Warsaw and then back down to get to where I want to be. That's definitely slowing me down. On the other hand, Rennenkampf is set up and attacking several of these German cav units. Now, I left these guys face up because the Russians knew where they were, and I'm going to tend to do that that way I don't forget things I shouldn't forget in between turns because I play kind of weird. Alright, let me see if I can get some of these Germans out of here. The reason is I don't want to get wiped out, basically. And this is one of the things. The Germans are really hard to pin down and hit their cav, and their bigger units are a real pain in the ass for the Russians to take on. However, I do manage to move forward and take myself another victory point hex, so I'll be regaining some of those losses that I had from the initial. Now we're on the German side on this. And the Germans fall back a little bit here. You can see kind of the positioning. I can get rid of some of these OCCs. They're not an issue. The reason is, yeah, I couldn't launch an attack against this main force. I don't want to end up with something out in the open against the whole Russian army there. I could have probably slagged this unit, but it would have meant, first of all, it would have had a chance to retreat, and secondly, it would have meant exposing where my strength is. Yeah, the 4 or 8 victory points I could probably get from attacking it might be well worth it, but then again, I could just get a retreat result. I could take losses. It's just too much of a crapshoot to make attacks with the Germans in general. See, for example, if I get a 5 or a 6, I'm going to take step losses, and those are going to cost, in the exclusive rules, German steps, unlike Russian ones, are worth 6 points rather than the 4 that the Russian steps lost. So, you know, it just didn't seem worth the risk there. And here, I did a little bit of shifting of troops, getting ready for the attack there as well. I don't want to make risky attacks unless there's a really high payoff. So, for example, when my wife was playing, she was cutting down this way and got kind of caught against the corner of the board, and I was willing to make attacks there just because I had her kind of pinned and could cut off her supply and force her to do some stuff she really didn't want to do for that. Anyway, move on to the fourth turn. So as we push into turn 4, the Ruskies get another supply depot down here. Now, they use their cav to move forward and kind of scout ahead. In one case, they managed to find a place where they can grab a victory point hex. They don't get that victory point. Chances are the Germans are going to chase them out of it, and in fact, they may actually isolate and destroy that poor unit. But if the Germans have to move a lot of forces to get there, that might create some sort of opportunity for Samsonov's army. Remember, he's getting a pile of new troops, I think, here. Most of those look like their first army. I was expecting that to be most of Samsonov's army. Meanwhile, Rennenkampf has moved forward, and he basically scouted all these locations, discovering a bunch of German cav. The German cav has to fall back. It was there for this purpose, to slow down the Russians, but now I do have to roll and see what gets out and what doesn't. And we're allowed to advance. Now, what's kind of important about all of this is I am able to advance this far because I have the supply trains up there. And we'll advance onto that river line. It's kind of dangerous to leave holes in your line. I don't think the Germans have a lot of force here, but then is it terribly dangerous to leave a cav there? If the Germans move forward, they might be risking themselves. So I'm going to leave that there to keep a solid line, because remember, these are kind of somewhat porous zones of control here. And the Germans are able to get across here too. We'll push over here. I don't really want to do this. That looks dangerous, doesn't it? 2, 4. I'm just afraid of getting cut off. So again, I'm using the cav to kind of shield my lines. And that'll push it over into the German side of the turn, because there was no battle. The Russians managed to push the Germans further west. And over here we see the Germans continuing to fall back just a little bit. Just getting a little out of the way, straightening out their line. Tempting the Russians in further, maybe, or maybe they can't hold it. Maybe it's mainly cav. The Russians don't know. They know there's something there, but they don't know where. They don't know how much. They know it's not enough to attack such a solid force. Over here, though, the Russians did find their little cav here. He's in trouble. And he can't withdraw because he's been surrounded with zones. So now, this guy's half strength. He's only at 2. 3, 4, 5, 6. And a half or whatever rivers are having, right? Yeah, attackers are halved. Okay, so we're talking about 6 to 1. I've got a shift in my favor. I could actually call on the army shift, I think, at this point, because I've thrown von Hoffman in here to double von Pritzwitz's ratings, but I don't really need to reveal that yet. So I've got a 6 to 1 over there against this guy. He's out of command control, which means he takes an extra step loss. And I get a 1, and he's eliminated. Now, if you remember, that's, I believe, 4 points for the Germans. Yeah. So we take another -4 there for the Russians, and, well, I can kill that. And now I'm allowed to advance. And now the Russians know somewhat what's here, but not entirely. I'm going to leave it as it is. But theoretically, these could have just become grouping, and I might not know if both of these hexes are filled. I think it's a good idea to do that, because then otherwise I'll have a pretty good... Oh, I hope that was 16. Nope, 17. Otherwise, I have too good an idea of what the Germans have facing me. But I don't know. All right. Well, that pushes it into turn 5. I forgot to mention step replacement here. The Germans get to use it starting on game turn 8. They need a 5 or a 6 for a replacement, and they can only do it with 2 infantry divisions per game turn, at least 7 hexes from the Russians. The Russians are on the offensive, so they can't really stop and recover their strength. The Germans would still gain, or the Russians would still gain victory points for taking German the steps away, even if they recover them. Now, I also forgot about Russian points. So it looks to me like the Russians are gathering 2 more points from territory they've grabbed, and they're beginning to come into where there's some riches tilted at 2, here at 1. However, turn 6 is where I've got to get things in deeper than I've been getting them. Anyway, there's 2. Well, as I've thrown my reinforcements down for this turn 4, I notice there's an optional rule, right, about how many points can travel along each rail track. Well, the Russians cannot bring everything in that's meant to be for Hex B if you play with that optional rule. Now, they can double them back and bring them around or whatever, but it's just one of those little inconsistencies that maybe not everything in the game has been completely thought out. It's not a big surprise. It is a magazine game, although actually the magazine games, from what I hear, got better production support, better development work than the quad itself would have, because the idea with the quad is, yeah, you're already sold on it. This is the selling piece. So I know this was mentioned in Art of Siege. I don't remember which author was kind of grousing about it a little bit, but that Berg got all this support for Siege of Constantinople, which ended up a mess anyway, in a lot of ways. It's a cool game, but it could have been, it could well have been Mark Herman here, because his game was very, very troubled in that quad series. In fact, it's the most dysfunctional of them, although it's a very interesting subject, the Alexander's Siege of Tyre. Anyway, start moving and figuring out my command control limitations, etc. I'm at the point where this guy may actually have more points of units around him than he can put in command control. I know that starts to happen at some point in the game. Attacks coming from both directions, kind of full run comp, pushing those calves still, and I've got to decide, hey, do I want to try to hold here or run away with the cav and leave this poor guy to his doom? The cav actually has some chance of holding out. And then over here, this push, he doesn't have to hit this unit. He can hit just these, which is what he's aiming for. He's got a 2-to-1 attack with a shift in his favor. That's not great. That's not a fantastic chart by any means. But he feels like he has to be pushing in because he wants to hit a couple of things. One is the victory conditions at the end of turn 6, but the other is this -2 or +2 for every supplied Russian headquarters, 4 more hexes inside the German border if at least 2 such headquarters units. He's trying to push those reinforcements out. Now, those reinforcements mean the Russians are doomed when they come in, but the Russians can win the game easier if they have them. I shifted one of the rail units over here. The other one dismounted and started walking. He's got a long way to go, but the other option was just kicking around. He wouldn't have anywhere he could come in at all reasonably. At the very least, he can mount back up and ride down if need be. All right, let's see what happens in terms of... Oh, and we've got Cav up against the Germans here. Now, the Germans might just try to kill that Cav. It's kind of in the front and exposed at this point. But let's see what happens with these other Cav. We're going to try to get them out of there. There's not a lot of room left to Königsberg, but with a fortress there and a big one, that should be safe. I get some advances if I want them. Will I still be in supply? 1, 2, 3. I will not be in supply there, so I don't want to advance there. But here, I would be in supply if I push forward. So I will, and I'm gonna throw the cav in there too. This looks like a really hard place for the Germans to hit. I've got 2 supply depots now, both pulling back to here. Now here, the Germans are in more trouble. 4, 6, this doesn't count. This guy's in supply and that. So we're talking 3-1 with 2 shifts in the Russians' favor. Well, it doesn't really matter. Terrain is terrain, right? A town doesn't count for anything, I don't think. Nope. So what did I say? 3-1? Yeah. 3-1. And that'll be on this middle row here. And I've got 2 shifts. That doesn't sound good. I want to get my cav out if I can. That, of course, dooms the infantry even worse. So that's going to be 6-1 all the way over. On the end chart, he's eliminated. That's just 1 step of Germans, which are worth 6 points. And to -11. I'm obviously not going to launch any attacks over here, but I can push forward. This guy could be in the attack too. That'll give me Tilsit. Generate some more points. And then over here, I had a 2-1. And I'm the terrain doesn't help. It's broken terrain. Almost no terrain does any good except towns and trenches and forts and stuff. So I've got 2-1 with only 1 shift in my favor because of Samsonov. That's not very good at all, but maybe I'll get lucky. A low roll is always nice in these games. It's a 1/2. What that means is the defender can retreat, which he probably will want to do. That's only a 2-hex retreat. Yes, it's 3 victory points, but no, I don't want to lose units. But on the Russian side, they have to lose half the affected steps. Now, the affected steps are going to be the Germans, and they have 3 steps affected. I don't believe the headquarters counts towards affected steps. Let's make sure. They may. All right, I'm going to have to look this up. I'll be back. As far as I can tell, the headquarters counts as a step. So I've got 2, 3, 4 steps. I'm going to have to lose 2, which is probably what I'd have to lose anyway. Now, here's what's interesting, because I can't recover any of these. Russian cav is not terribly worthwhile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lose this infantry here. That's a single step, and I'm going to lose this poor cav. That's a second step. However, that's 8 points in the Germans' favor. And now I can push into here, but there's kind of a problem here in that I have to leave some troops here to help guard. Otherwise, I'm going to get cut off pretty easily. In fact, I may be in danger anyway of getting cut off. And you'll see how brutal this system can be. It depends on how many troops the Germans have back here. I don't know. So that's where we're going to be at the end of the Russian 5th turn. And now we go to the Germans, and we can see if they can take advantage of this. The Germans have decided to bring the hammer down. I'm launching an attack here against this hex, and another one here against this hex. These are not tremendous odds, and I'm taking big risks with the Germans here. I've also conglomerated maybe 2/3 of my force at least there, and the Russians are well aware of that. The German army has pulled back from Rennenkampf, and I'm trying to destroy these. Now, I'm not sure how much I would do this, except I got kind of fixated and had already set up this attack here. Ooh, these guys are going to be crossing a river. They're not going to like that. Ooh. This could be very bad for the Germans, and I could be succeeding in giving the Russians a victory for the first time that I've seen one. Generally, I just kind of pull back and play the delaying game with the Germans, and you can see it works pretty well. The only real danger is the call for those reinforcements. Of course, when they come in, then you can try to win with them because you have this overwhelming power. But here, I'm trying to neutralize Samsonov so that if I can wipe him out, if I could win these two battles. See, I've got this guy cut out of supply and this guy, but that doesn't affect their defensive strength. I had to check that. I thought it did. It only affects offensive strength. But if I can cut off Samsonov himself, I can pretty much wipe out his ability to fight fairly quickly. The danger, of course, Königsberg is actually pretty much unshielded. It's not clear that the Russians can advance too far, though. They've got to link their two supply chains to get down in that range. The other thing is, if I can largely neutralize or halt this, that prevents the +2 per headquarters bonus from coming into play. Of course, if I give them lots of victory points, or if Pritzwitz somehow takes a step loss, and that's going to be pretty hard, I do end up with a +3 to the die roll for that, or if we get a huge victory point swing, but I don't think we're going to see that here. All right, well, let's see how these fights go. Well, why don't I roll them out? No reason not to. Okay, so over here I've got 4, 6, 10, 14, 16 to 8. That gives me a 2-to-1, and I've got 2 shifts from my leaders. Hoffman doesn't help in combat, even though he's pretty damn good in La Grande Guerre. So 2-to-1, 2 shifts. Tack 1. That puts me not quite on the best table, but for something of this value, hey, I think it's worth it. We'll see. I get a 4. That's not great. That's not bad. The attacker's going to take 1, the defender takes 2. Now, there's no reason I can't retreat here. I'm willing to give ground rather than losses. So I'm going to pull back. And now the Germans have to decide if they're advancing. They'll pull up. They've really pocketed these suckers. I'm going to have to really work to get the Russians out of there, even if there's a German victory here. But remember, the Germans took a loss. That's going to be half of the steps of the smallest force, which means I've got to take 2 step losses there. I'm going to take them from von Pritzwitz's stack because it's bigger. There's a nice little division. That's worth 2 steps, huh? However, that's also worth 12 victory points for the Russians, and that's where the pain kind of comes. So I'm already at -19. We get rid of that, and we're going to be down to -7. Now this other attack here, let's see what I got figured out for this. I've got 5. Oh, these are all across the river. Crap. 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13. That's going to be 6. And 5 is 11. That's not very good. To 9. I don't think I can make that attack. All right, I'm going to refrain from making that attack. I still have the Russians caught out of supply, and they're going to have to fight their way out of that bag. And that's kind of neat in and of itself. We didn't have to make the reinforcement roll. Well, we technically had to make it, but Rennenkampf isn't far enough in to give any modifiers. There are no modifiers for any other things, so there's no chance that we can get anything other than a no effect. So, I made the die roll, but it didn't do anything. Germans are all still in supply. There is some danger, though, and we'll see how this plays out when the Russians take their turn. This is going to be kind of interesting. First things first, I noticed I forgot to give my score. So the Russians are getting 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another point under there. 5 points for the turn. They don't get the 3 points in here because it's not in supply. They have to be able to trace supply when that happens. So what did I say? 5, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So that's down to only -2 points. And wow, I'm not used to the Russians doing that well, but this is terrible. they're out of supply. Remember, if they attack out of supply, there's a couple of things. First of all, they're halved. Okay, that's bad. Whatever is helping their attack is probably going to be halved because it won't be in command and control under Samsonov. But I think I can fix this. I think I can move my way into a position where I'm not out of supply, and maybe I'm threatening some of these German units. Where this German attack, the Germans are going to have to pay for their attack. They really did need to take this hex and in order to really slam Samsonov completely. The reason is because being out of supply, make sure I understand it, we'll end up having the movement allowance. But remember, you can still move a hex automatically, and you can slip out through a zone of control. Now, you can trace your supply line through a friendly unit in an enemy zone of control. It's just the Germans have the tremendous advantage of being able to trace through an empty zone of control with their tactical quality. But the Russians can still trace through their own units. So I think we're going to see them be able to get out of that little trap that's set up. And let's see what we have. We have 6E, 6 being the turn. E, this is part of Samsonov's army here. And these are some Volksgrenadiers. Now, at the end of this turn, the Russians score their special points, so I gotta be careful with that as well. Forward with their scouting, they wouldn't have been able to make it back. And some of them I left where they were and then went back to them and moved them. So basically I couldn't come down here to make an attack because my supply range, this is as far as I could get. This guy's ranging me back to here, this guy's running back to there. Now conceivably I could get my supply one more hex down, but this guy was out of command control, so he couldn't move far enough. I'm shifting more supply and another corps down this way, but it's real hard to get to those victory point spots in this 6th turn. Let's take a look at where we're supposed to go. North of the 14XX, that's this line here, and west of the XX19, which is basically across here. So Samsonov would have to punch through, which he can't do. He's trying to escape from this hook that came here. And on the Rennenkampf side, where I have a lot more penetration going on, I'm just not getting deep enough. I basically have to get to Königsberg in order to get the advantage. Well, there's no way I could get there. I could be one hex further down with my supply sources. Now, yes, I could have sent some Second Army supply down to help the First Army and to penetrate deeper that way. That may be what you have to do. You may have to kind of cheat the army composition. You're allowed to do that. This is not breaking the rules as opposed to what I did over here by scouting too far. But you want this balanced approach. And when you play this game as a 3-player game, which there are no rules for it particularly that I could find, but it works very well as one because the two Russian armies are almost not supporting each other. Historically, they totally did not. Well, one player controls his army's units. Actually, we had one of these divisions, not a corps, that's gotten in on a train and run off. He's been replaced by this, but he was from the Second Army, and that's why I'm bringing him down there, because I feel like I should be allowed to have that, especially since I'm having trouble down here. All right, what kind of attacks do we have? Well, I don't know. I got the Russians out of here. I might have an attack here. I've got to worry here, not so much about this guy. He's not in trouble, but this guy wants to get out of there. I don't want to get attacked there, and he's out of there. And the Russians could advance, but if they did so, they'd be out of supply. This guy's not in supply. I need to move him somewhere. Pull him back there. Okay. It's really hard to maintain your supply with just a couple of those depots to any depth. All right, but I got to move Samsonov in because Rennenkampf in. I haven't moved him yet. I'm going to push him down here to get him that 4 hexes inside. This way I have a chance of forcing the Germans to take their reinforcements, because that could be, up to 65 points. That really puts the burden on the Germans to win this battle a lot more than they're winning it right. If I want to make this attack here, I added up my factors, and I've got 7, 11, 12, 13 to a defensive 7, which means I don't even get 2 to 1. Just missed it. I couldn't get these closer. I couldn't bring them in. I would have if I could, but they were out of command control, and I can't use German rails. So what we're talking about is 1 to 1 here. Now I'd get a column shift in my favor. The attacker could get will almost certainly take a loss, and that's a couple of steps. And the defender almost certainly can retreat, which doesn't, that helps the Russian position a lot in terms of saving their units, but I think I'm fairly safe with this position. We'll see what we boil out of that, and we'll cross our fingers and hope Hindenburg comes in. Okay, so it's problem time for the Germans. There are 2 Russian headquarters. There are only 2 Russian headquarters at this point in the game. Another one comes in later. More than 4 hexes inside. So that is 2 for each. So that's +4. And we got a pretty good chance that something bad's going to happen for the Germans. And they get an 8. Pritzwitz replaced. I can take the West Front reinforcements as an option. Well, I gotta look. I think he comes in like next turn or something there. On the next German reinforcement segment. So I'll have to haul Hindenburg, and he'll be coming in next turn. Now, that causes a -3 to the die roll. I have the option to bring the West Front reinforcements in at the same time. Part of me kind of wants to do it for historical reasons, but part of me is also saying, well, for victory points, allowing just the 8th headquarters is only worth 20 points, whereas it's 45 more points to grab all these units. Those are good units, though, and they could stomp the Russians. Oh boy, it's a hard call. And they come in next turn too, right? I would have liked to have avoided this. They're going to be 4 turns later. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, God. I may need them 4 turns later. But if they came in soon, that would be a lot of points coming in. Of course, if I'm forced to take them, well, that's going to be tough to have happen. Oh, God. I hate making these kind of decisions, but my feeling is I'm going to hold off on them. I'm going to give 20 points to the Russians. Yeah. Made up counter. And, well, that's what we got. And the Germans will try to hold off this Russian horde with what they've got. Jeez. Yeah, I think I can break this up. Alright. So I'm going forward. Okay, so the Germans give more ground to Rennenkampf, trying to give it as slowly as possible, buy as much time as possible, because I think I've got Samsonov destroyed here. So I've got 4, 5, 6, 10, 14. Not these guys, they're not in there. 14, that makes 19, 20, 24, 25, 26, 27. And I'm facing 9 defensive points. Now, the Russians are in command control, as are the Germans actually, but they're not in supply. that doesn't have a lot of effect here, except they can't retreat anywhere. Everywhere they can go, they've got zones cutting them off. So what did I say? That's 3-1. I get a shift, actually 2 shifts from my heroic leader here. Who is that? VM17. Let's see. Von Mackensen. Yeah. He's very cool, actually. And then I have von Pritzwitz giving a 3rd shift. So I've got 3-1 here with 3 shifts. I don't even need all that. I'm on the top table. Now, that doesn't guarantee a win, but it does make sure the Russians are going to have to take heavier losses from this. So even a 1-1, I'm going to do some pretty hefty losses, and they're going to have trouble getting out of there. And they do get a terrible die roll. What gives pluses to the die roll? Curious how you get a bonus on that combat table. Hoping it's not like tactical quality. I'm going to look for that because I don't know where that's coming from. I can't find one for the life of me, and obviously it's not going to be a shift downward instead of column shifts. I'm looking here thinking maybe there's an errata situation here. All I can think of is these rows shouldn't even be there. Anyway, we've got I cannot find any rule. Marusian Lakes. I bet you. Oh, here's the 3-player rules. Yeah, they each command their own units. They, I think, can only draw supply from their own units. It's just really ugly when you play it that way. I think there's a weather rule here. Effects of weather. Yep. No, I'm not seeing it there. Well, damned if I know. Anyway. What is encirclement and destruction? This is starting on game turn 5. And that doesn't have it. That's just this scenario. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there are games in the series that use that extra part of the table. Anyway, we got 1s for each. Now, the Russians are incapable of retreating. So they're going to lose half their steps. They have less steps than the Germans, so they're going to be the base level. They have 5 steps. I do believe that's going to be rounded up, but I'm not positive. Yeah, I'm bumbling around here for no good reason. Yeah, I don't think that was clearly stated here either. Okay, so 5 steps. I'm going to have to lose 3 steps. I hate to do this because this is one of the few units that can attack reasonably well, but if I take 3 steps off my yeah, at least this clears up some stacking points. So that'll be 1, 2, 3 steps for the Russians. Now 3 steps for the Russians is worth 12 points to the Germans, but we're not done yet because the Germans also have to lose 3 steps with a 1 result, and I'm going to have to pick those out. I'll come back in a moment. Took a couple of 1-steppers out of here, and then I reduced one of my big divisions, which isn't pleasant because he's, losing 3 attack points that way, but maybe I can recover that. The little units, the 1-point units, hey, I kind of want to reduce. I don't want to take too much damage because I need to win the fight with what I've got on the field right now. But that means 18 points for the Russians. So they get 10. 8 and 6 puts them up to 24. And we're actually seeing them do pretty well, but this just looks terrible. Of course, on the other hand, Rennenkampf is making some good ground. Now I have to score points. And this is the end of turn 6. I did not make it into the range that I needed to for this. Obviously, the Russians went first and they didn't advance enough. So I'm not going to get any of the bonus points here. I didn't make it deep enough in this area. But I do get my normal points. He's in supply. I think that's an issue. 2, 3, 4. I didn't make it here. Lost this. Looks like 5 more Russian points are gathered, so we're up to 29 there. And I'm going to load this one up at this point. I'm about halfway through the game.